Hi everyone, my name is Jacob George and I currently live in Boston. The Holy Eucharist, by God's mercy, has been a daily part of my life for several years now. It started when I moved here for school. My parents were in Dubai, my brother was in India, and all of a sudden, each one of us started going for daily Mass. Without telling each other to go for Mass, there wasn't a particular need or a reason or an experience. It was totally God's mercy, and I'm convinced it's because of the prayers and faithfulness of the generations before. Our parents, our grandparents, and their parents, their faithfulness to Christ and the Eucharist. The next semester, even scheduling class was around Mass timings. There was just one a day. And God always pulled through. Even when it came to unexpected assignments, exams, or even meetings with professors, God always made a way to attend the Mass. Now thinking about it, it reminds me what the Catechism says. God thirsts that we may thirst for Him. And you can see this clearly in some of the stories from the Gospel, where Jesus meets Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus is up the tree. Jesus goes to Zacchaeus, calls him, tells him to come down, and Zacchaeus is changed. Or the meeting of Jesus and the woman at the well. Jesus is at the well before the Samaritan woman gets there, and Jesus is the first person to ask for a drink. God always seeks us out. And now thinking about the Eucharist, it seems that all of Christianity is centered around this. In the Old Testament, there's foreshadowing of it, where King Melchizedek, the priest in King Melchizedek, offers bread and wine. Or the Israelites eating unleavened bread during Passover. God giving manna sufficient for each day while in the desert. And even during Jesus' time on earth, during his public ministry, the wedding feast at Cana, converting the water into wine, the multiplication of loaves, again of bread. And even when it comes to the perfect prayer, the Our Father, where we say, give us this day our daily bread. In the Greek, if we were to translate it literally, it says, give us this day our super substantial bread. And what is the super substantial transcendent bread but the Eucharist? It says, give us this day our daily Eucharist. Even after the resurrection, the true disciples, Clopas and the other, who Jesus meets and walks, explains scriptures, does not recognize Jesus still. They recognize Jesus during the breaking of the bread. Their eyes were opened. Jesus also tells us at the very end, before the ascension, that I am with you always until the end of time. And where else is Jesus present, body, blood, soul, and divinity, but in the Holy Eucharist? It seems like when we look at all of history, God in the New as well as the Old Testament always did miracles, gave us good things. There was healings of leprosy back then. There was also healings during Jesus' time. There was resurrection from the dead before. There was resurrection of the dead even in the hands of the apostles. The one gift from God that isn't present in the old but in the new, that was brought about and culminated at the birth of Christ, the Word becoming flesh, the Word that suffered for us, the Word that died for us. And that Word is flesh that's given to us each time at the Eucharist. It tells us the words that Jesus, when He thought of each one of us, when He died for us, that you and I are worth dying for. And that's who we receive in the Eucharist. You know, if we ever want to see a miracle in front of our eyes, we just need to go for Mass and meet Jesus. And then thinking about even when we desire to receive Jesus. I went on a ski trip last year. We were supposed to have Mass in the morning, unexpectedly got cancelled. I told my friends we'll go for the evening Mass. I need to attend it. I'm not skipping just because of a ski trip today. It was a Saturday. There was supposed to be vigils. We went around, looked up on different websites for Mass timings. There was none that was suitable. We wouldn't either miss it. We'd be too late to reach, or it was already over. Finally, we found a particular college, and on that campus, they had vigils at 8 or 9 in the night, and that was the only option left. So thank God that was going to happen. We make it. The church was empty. There's no one in the pews. And then we see these monks, Benedictine monks, walk in. And there was quite a distance between the pews and where they were sitting. And they started praying their vigils or night prayer. And it wasn't vigil Mass. And I was a little hurt and disappointed that of all the days to miss Mass is because I went on a ski trip. And so sitting there and kneeling and praying while they were reciting their prayers, I asked God if there's a way to receive Holy Communion. Now these monks had entered from a different entrance, and when it was over, they were exiting a different way as well. But out of nowhere, this one monk comes and sits next to the tabernacle on the right side of the church. And slowly, I walked up to the monk, who I later realized was a priest. And I told him a little bit of the explanation on wanting to attend and receive the Eucharist, and that we'd gone on a ski trip and then unexpectedly not been able to make it to Mass. Before I could complete, Father gets up, goes in, changes his vestments, brings out the Mass book, prayers, and starts reading some of it with me, one-on-one, and then at the end of it, he gives me Holy Communion. There was absolutely no reason that he needed to do this, and that he was open and willing to give Jesus to me. And after this, soon after, Father walked off and was away. He wasn't even sitting next to the tabernacle. So God always makes a way if we desire it even a little bit. And even another story that comes into mind, all of this when we think about the Eucharist, it's about intimacy with Jesus. The time we spend with Him, we receive Him, we become more like Him. God who says, "Be holy as I am holy." And there's no way that we can be holy unless we are completely united with Christ. St. Thomas Aquinas even talks about friendship being in the presence of each other, and God made a way for that to be in our presence in the Holy Eucharist, the Holy Mass. There's a story of St. John Paul II when he came to visit America, and he was coming to one of the bishop's house. There's a priest who's in charge of the Holy Father's schedule. He comes into the bishop's house, goes through the different doors, sees that one door opens to the tabernacle where Jesus is present. He clearly instructs the house to keep this door closed. Otherwise, the Holy Father, if he sees Jesus, will go in, spend 45 minutes, the schedule's going to be off. He said they even reroute some of the routes when they go through churches to avoid the churches back in the Vatican, so that John Paul II isn't distracted to go in and sit with Jesus rather than do the other duties. Anyway, the Holy Father comes in to the bishop's house. He walks through and suddenly stops by this one door, turns back, looks at the bishop or priest in charge, and wags his finger at him, and opens the door, goes in, and sits with Jesus for the next 45 minutes. And this was no random coincidence. The same thing happens when he goes into a seminary across the street the next day. This is this particular intimacy that a person can have with Jesus. To know His presence. There are so many stories. There's another one where a farmer keeps going by the church, gets in and gets out, start of the day, end of the day. St. John Vianney was the priest in charge of this church. And one day he asked this farmer, "What do you do?" with a smile every day that you go in. And the farmer replied, "I look at him and he looks at me." How privileged are we to receive Jesus? Unlike any other religion, we can say that God humbled himself to be present in our midst, and we're able to actually receive him, body, blood, soul, and divinity, every single day if we wanted. If we came from God and we are to go back to God, what should our real priority be? And there's always Jesus who thirsts for us and longs for us and waits for us to come receive him in the Holy Eucharist.